Sony's been delivering some new flagship smartphone models at record pace, and it's a little hard to believe that it's been only just over 3 years since the initial launch of the Xperia Z, back in the early days of 2013. In the time since, we've seen the arrival of the Z1, Z2, all the way up to last year's Z5. This year though, we didn't get the Xperia Z6, and instead saw Sony introduce its Xperia X series of phones, of which this guy, the Xperia X Performance, is the new top-of-the-line model. We've spent the last several days getting to know this handset, finding out the ways it really does improve over the Z5, but also finding more than a few where it kinda let us down. I'm Stephen Shank with PhoneArena, bringing you our full review of the Sony Xperia X Performance. The Xperia X Performance borrows more than a little from the Xperia Z5's design. Sony's back with the same basic layout, button placement remains unchanged, but that said, there are some real improvements here. Gone are those annoying flaps for waterproofing, and maybe the biggest change, Sony's abandoned the Z5's glass back panel in favor of the Xperia X Performance's brushed aluminum back. Not only does that make the phone feel a little bit more durable, but it also helps resist picking up stray fingerprints. Now, that said, it looks really nice, but the more time we spent with the phone, the less enamored we were with that back. For one, it feels a little bit thin. Tapping on it makes a disconcerting hollow noise. And also, when playing back music at any appreciable volume level, you'll feel the aluminum back reverberate along with the speakers. We just wish it felt a little bit more sturdy. Just like its external design, the Xperia X Performance borrows a lot from the Z5's internals as well. Maybe the biggest change here is the move to a Qualcomm Snapdragon 820 processor. Other than that, it's largely unchanged from the Z5. We're looking at the same 3GB of RAM, same 32GB of storage, same 23-megapixel main camera. To its credit, Sony did update the front facer to a 13-megapixel component, but in other areas we sort of see downgrades. The Xperia X Performance picks up a 2700 mAh battery, down from the Z5's 2900 mAh, and while there's another 1080p screen size drops to 5 inches, down from 5.2 last year. With that Snapdragon 820 processor under the hood, you'd expect the Xperia X Performance to be one pretty darn fast smartphone. And indeed, the benchmark test we ran showed this to be one of the best performing 820-based models out there, even with only 3GB of RAM. That said, actually using the phone for a few days, we found a few places here or there where frame rates were a little lower than we'd like, UI tended to stutter. This is minor stuff. By and large, the experience was very, very solid. Unfortunately, we can't say the same for the phone's display. While it's very, very bright, only a little bit dimmer than the Z5 itself, color accuracy was not quite where we'd like it to be. Sony's 23-megapixel main camera does a few things really well. The camera app is quick to launch, autofocus speeds are really fast, and the camera is able to follow subjects around as they move, keeping them in sharp focus. Beyond that though, things start going downhill kind of fast. Output is both noisy and lacks saturation, and some of the phone's best shooting modes aren't available at full resolution. 23-megapixel mode can't use them, even 20-megapixel can't. And to get the full variety, you have to stick to just 8-megapixel shooting. Maybe the biggest upset though is the complete lack of 4K video support. The Xperia Z5 could shoot 4K just fine, but with the X Performance, Sony's limited recording to just 1080p. Admittedly, you can do 60 frames per second 1080p, but that has its own problems. After shooting just a little over a minute of video, we found the phone overheating and the camera software locking us out of advanced functionality. That's not the sort of performance we expect to be seeing from a flagship model like this. Another big upset for the Xperia X Performance, at least for the US version we're reviewing, is the fingerprint scanner, or the lack thereof. Just like Sony did with the Z5, it's abandoning its side-mounted fingerprint scanner embedded in the phone's power button for certain markets. It's so frustrating because it looks exactly the same as it does on the international version with fingerprint functionality fully engaged. Why Sony's taking it away for the US, the company hasn't given a convincing explanation for. It's just one more thing that adds up to making this phone as frustrating an experience as it is. When it comes to the battery life of the Xperia X Performance, your mileage may vary. For our testing, we pushed the phone really hard and got a little over 6 hours of screen on time. When you use the phone though, you can probably expect it to last quite a bit longer, and Sony says that with its various stamina boosting modes, users can hope to get up to 2 days of battery life out of the phone. For recharging, the phone does support fast charging, but we found it to take a bit longer than some of its competitors. Even though it only has a 2700 mAh battery, it still took over 2 hours to recharge the Xperia X Performance, whereas the Galaxy S7 has a larger battery but actually recharges a little bit faster. Sony's smartphones don't get a ton of attention for their user interface, and that's kind of a good thing. They don't get that much attention because they're not really trying to do that much. But at the same time, that means they're also not getting in your way. Stuff basically works like you would expect it to, only Sony's jazzed things up a little with its own collection of icons. There's a theming engine if you want to give your phone a little extra customization, and plenty of attractive wallpapers baked right in. With all the criticisms we've voiced of the Xperia X Performance, it'd be easy to come away with the impression that this is somehow a bad smartphone. Don't get us wrong, that's not the case at all. This is a perfectly fine smartphone that does a few things pretty well. The problem though is that it's not the phone that Sony thinks it's selling. The manufacturers priced the handset at about $700. That's putting it on even footing with phones like the Galaxy S7, LG G5, and HTC 10, all of which premium flagships, and I'll give you a lot more for your money than you get with Sony's model. That's the problem here. There are too many trade-offs, too many missing features to justify that really premium flagship level pricing. If Sony were to make the phone available as a really high-end mid-ranger maybe, something priced $500–600, this is a lot more attractive of a handset. Right now though, there are just too many missing features, too many corners cut to really recommend the Xperia X Performance. I'm Stephen Shank with PhoneArena. Thanks for watching and stay tuned for more reviews.